You're 28 years old, and for the past 6 years, you've been lying to everyone in your life. Your LinkedIn profile proudly lists a law degree you never earned. There's only one problem. You've never passed the bar exam. You never even took it. It started out of pure desperation. Fresh from college with a worthless philosophy degree and crushing student debt, you applied for a paralegal position. During the interview, the senior partner misread your resume and congratulated you on passing the bar. He mentioned the salary 3 times what a paralegal would earn. Your rent was 2 months overdue, and your car was about to be repossessed. So instead of telling the truth, you smiled and said, "Thank you." That was 6 years ago. The first few months were pure terror. You locked yourself in your office, frantically Googling basic legal terms. Your assistant waited outside. You mastered vague lawyer-speak phrases like, "We'll need to examine the precedent," even when you had no idea what you were talking about. You became expert at deflection, always finding reasons to push actual courtroom work onto others. But here's what no one tells you about fraud. You get better at it, much better. After a year, you could draft contracts by cleverly adapting templates. After 2 years, you knew enough procedure to coach clients. By year 3, you were billing more hours than the real lawyers because you worked twice as hard to conceal your ignorance. Paranoia became your secret weapon. While genuine attorneys grew complacent, you treated every case as if your life depended on it. Because it did, your system was nearly bulletproof. You only accepted cases likely to settle out of court. You studied local judges obsessively through public records. You built a network of real lawyers you could consult, mostly by buying them expensive drinks to extract information. You even hired a legitimate attorney as of counsel to quietly review your work, to catch mistakes before they became disasters. The money flowed in. You bought a house? You got engaged to someone who loved bragging about dating a lawyer at dinner parties? Your parents finally stopped asking when you'd get a real job. At the firm's holiday party, the managing partner publicly praised your dedication. You smiled through a humble speech, while your stomach twisted in knots. Then came the Morrison case. It began simply enough. A client wanted to sue a pharmaceutical company over a defective product. Normally, your firm avoided such cases because they required real litigation, but the client was the managing partner's brother-in-law. Refusal wasn't an option. You agreed, hoping to settle quickly as usual, but the pharmaceutical company refused to settle. They wanted a fight and a public trial in open court, with judges, rules, and procedures you'd only skimmed on Wikipedia. You tried everything to make it disappear, slashing the settlement demand, pushing mediation, arbitration, anything. But their lawyers sensed weaknesses. They smelled blood and wanted to humiliate a small firm. The trial date was set 6 weeks away. You couldn't sleep. You couldn't eat. You woke at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, imagining the judge asking a basic procedural question, while you stood frozen and exposed. Panic attacks hit you in the office bathroom. You drafted resignation letters 17 times. But quitting meant explaining why, and explaining why meant confessing everything. Your career would end. Criminal charges would follow. Your engagement would collapse. Your parents would be devastated. Every client you'd ever helped would question if their legal work was valid. You were trapped. That's when Marcus Chun walked into your office. He was a junior associate on the pharmaceutical company's legal team. He looked nearly as terrified as you felt. He closed the door, checked for listeners, and revealed something explosive. He had found internal documents proving the company knew about the product defect for 18 months before your client was harmed. It was a smoking gun that could win the case instantly and force a massive settlement. But there was a price. Marcuse wanted you to help him disappear professionally. He asked you to forge documents showing he had been transferred to Singapore, backdate employment records, create a clean paper trail placing him overseas. That way, when the documents surfaced, no one could connect them to him. He would leak the smoking gun anonymously. Your client would win big. The company would settle for millions, and Marcus would start a new life. In Asia with his career intact, in exchange for multiple felonies, you would get a victory without ever stepping into a real courtroom. Everything he asked fell perfectly within your dark expertise. You had been forging documents and manipulating paper trails for years. This was simpler than some of the corporate games you'd already run. You could finish it in an afternoon with minimal risk. The giant bureaucracy would likely never notice. You could win. You could survive. The facade could continue, but something inside you broke. Helping clients with contracts and negotiations had always felt like a victimless crime. But this manufacturing evidence, helping a corporation bury negligence that hurt real people, was different. This was real corruption, the kind that destroyed lives. You looked at Marcus and said the words that surprised you both. "No, I can't do it." Marcus blinked, then grew angry. "You're insane. I'm handing you a winning case. All you have to do is commit a few felonies. To help cover up evidence of a dangerous product, He studied you for a long moment, then smiled coldly. You're not actually a lawyer, are you? Your blood ran cold? He didn't know your full story, but he didn't care. If you wouldn't help him, he would make the trial a nightmare. You have 48 hours to reconsider, he said. After that, we go nuclear. The door closed. You sat in your expensive leather chair, surrounded by fake diplomas and unread law books, and realized you had no moves left. You couldn't forge the documents. You couldn't survive the trial. You couldn't confess. That night, you did something unprecedented. You went to a real lawyer you had known from college one, who had actually earned her degree and passed the bar. You told her you needed help with a complicated case. When she asked why you were struggling, you broke. You told her everything. The fake diploma, the Wikipedia education, 7 years of terror-driven improvisation, the settlements won through paranoia and luck, the impending exposure. She listened calmly, then delivered the truth. You're going to prison. What you've done is massive criminal fraud. If Marcus exposes you, or if you go to trial and fail, you're looking at years behind bars. But she offered one slim, painful path. Self-report, contact the state bar immediately, confess everything, and cooperate fully. It wouldn't save you from charges, but voluntary surrender might earn some leniency. You would still face prison time, restitution, and permanent disbarment. You drove home that night watching your entire fraudulent life collapse. Yet instead of panic, you felt something unexpected: relief. The constant fear, the performance, the slow poison of living as an impostorate had been exhausting you for years. The next morning, you walked into the State Bar Association and confessed. The investigator was stunned. People rarely volunteer for their own destruction. You explained you couldn't live with it anymore. Within hours, you were speaking with prosecutors. Your unusual cooperation worked in your favor. The deal? Guilty plea to unauthorized practice of law and fraud. 18 months in minimum security prison. 5 years probation. Permanent ban from practicing law. Full restitution. And the hardest part, you had to personally contact every former client and confess what you had done, giving them the chance to sue or file grievances. That was worse than prison. Telling Marcus was painful. Telling the Morrison client was brutal, watching their face move from confusion to betrayal to fury. Some clients screamed. Some threatened you. Most hung up. A few, surprisingly, said they had suspected something, but didn't care because their cases had settled. Well, you liquidated everything: house, car, clothes to pay restitution. You entered prison with one small bag and an odd sense of peace. 80 months gave you time to think deeply about who you had been, who you pretended to be, and who you might become. Other inmates found your story hilarious. You went to prison for pretending to be a lawyer? That's the dumbest hustle ever. Maybe it was, but it was yours. When you were released at age 38, you had a felony record and no prospects. You took a data entry job paying $9 an hour. Working alongside recent high school graduates, your apartment was a tiny studio in a rough neighborhood. Your car was 15 years old, yet for the first time in a decade, you slept through the night. No anxiety dreams, no panic attacks, no pretending to be someone else. You were broke. You were a felon. You had a dead-end job, but you were finally, honestly yourself. Someone who had made catastrophic mistakes and was slowly paying for them with truth. Turns out, there is freedom in honesty, even when the truth costs you everything.